Welcome to the Middle East Stream. I'm Marwa Osman. Recent developments in Yemen demonstrate that al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, referred to as the AQAP, is restive, capable and emboldened. However, the military approach of the United States is only worsening the situation. Add to that AQAP's announcement last week of the formation of a new armed unit specifically tasked with attacking Houthi rebels, whose leaders already suspect that Sanaa politicians have stronger links with al-Qaeda than they are admitting. These suspicions will only worsen when AQAP's attacks on the Houthis begin. To further elaborate the Yemeni crisis, with us tonight in the studio is Dr. Labaki, Professor of Constitutional Law and International Relations at the NDU. Welcome with us, Dr. Labaki.
Thank you.
And also with us via link is Ms. Rasha Jarhum, social researcher. Thank you very much for being with us here tonight, Ms. Jarhum.
Thank you, Marwa. Thank you
for
having me.
Now let us begin by watching this following report.
Several reports have been published since the beginning of March, warning that al-Qaeda in Yemen has splintered yet again, as to form a faction with the sole purpose to fight Houthi fighters in Yemen's northern region. The Houthis, a group organized under the leadership of Abd al-Malik al-Houthi, have in recent months launched a campaign against Yemen Salafists in a bid to regain control over Yemen northern provinces and end what they have perceived as decades of repression and Saudi-promoted sectarianism. Far from being a remote tribal faction, the Houthis have managed over the past 2 years to expand not only their territories, but their political pull by attracting to their cause thousands of frustrated Yemenis. Even though the Houthis have been keen to play down their religious orientation, insisting that their political ambitions are in no way linked to their desire to overshadow Sunni Islam in Yemen, their expansionist policy has caught al-Qaeda's attention enough to prompt an aggressive retaliation policy. Having identified a new enemy to its cause, al-Qaeda Yemen announced the formation of Ansar Allah in the central regions. Al-Qaeda slammed the government for allegedly allowing Shiite insurgents to grow in strength in a bid to counteract the rise of radical Sunni Islam. Al-Qaeda kept its promise and targeted Yemen's military on Tuesday, when terror militants disguised as policemen targeted a military manned checkpoint near Mukalla in the southeastern province of Hadramaut, killing 4 soldiers. Security experts have warned that sectarian tensions will likely flare up now that al-Qaeda has decided to move its terror campaign to northern Yemen, having identified a new crusade. Government officials have yet to react to the news.
Dr. Labaki, the Yemeni state and with it its president, President Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi, are facing a tricky situation with the return of the al-Qaeda's terrorist actions against the security forces in the country now. However, the past decade, Yemen has become an obvious attraction for al-Qaeda, and they also declare that their ambition is to fight the American hegemony in the area and the country in specific. But yet they keep inciting violence in the Arabian Peninsula with other tribesmen and other political groups. Can you explain to us the real agenda behind their strategy of increasing violence in Yemen?
Yes, al-Qaeda has a lot of objectives. We were able to check a number of seized documents where they draw a complete strategy. Among the major objectives, first of all, find a safe haven in a weak state. As you know, the Yemeni government is having difficulty controlling its territory. You have the Houthi in the north, you have al-Hirak in the south, and add to that now the al-Qaeda presence. 2, the strategic location of the Arab Peninsula. Yemen is next door to the Holy Land, to the Islamic Holy Land. And you know, the Qaeda has a big agenda in that issue. 3, they are in touch with the Saudi that they are fighting bitterly. Also, another reason, they would like to control shipping in the sea, in the Red Sea, where a lot of shipping cross through the Canal of Suez and go to the Indian Ocean. So these are some of the major objectives they have in mind. Also, they have changed the strategy, their operational strategy. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, they had followed usually a very brutal behavior with local citizens and local population. Here we see just the contrary. Again, in those seized documents, it appears clearly that the agenda is to be close to people, to be involved, you know, in the traditional strategy fundamentalist movements do by providing welfare assistance to local population, by replacing a defaulting state, and also the number of foreign recruits is lower than in other countries, like in Syria or Afghanistan. So this brings them closer to people. Also, they also take into consideration and try to have the same political aims of people, mainly, as you know, in South Yemen, where the population has a lot of resentments against the north, but I think we'll have the opportunity to talk about that.
We will. Well, Mr. Jarhum, the al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen, they are referred to, as we said, as the AQAP. They announced the formation of a new armed group called Ansar al-Sharia in the central regions, claiming that the new group's purpose is to combat the Shiite Houthi fighters based in northern Yemen. Now, after such an announcement, what will the Yemeni government do in order to prevent further escalation for the violence in its country?
Frankly, I think the government of Yemen is facing a huge challenge in this regards because it's now moving towards political transition, and the security sector as well. There is a lot of transition in it, so I don't think much can be done. The government of Yemen is usually taking care of the security of Yemen is a very large country. The areas that the state cannot intervene or impose security, they rely on tribal governance and such. And I think al-Qaeda, if we use the example from 2011, when they took over the city of Abiyan, the government could not do anything through military action, and at the end they relied on popular committees from the local people to fight al-Qaeda. And at that time also Houthi fighters joined, and they were fighting against al-Qaeda. As such, as I said, it's a huge challenge for the government of Yemen to have an intervention in that regard because of the transition.
Well, taken from what Ms. Jarhum just said, Dr. Labaki, security experts in Yemen and in the region as well previously predicted that al-Qaeda will continue to systematically target Yemen's southern seaports, Mukalla and Aden, so as to establish a permanent base of command in Yemen's most geostrategical and sensitive area. Wasn't it the responsibility of the Yemeni government to take precautions in those areas in specific rather than wait for the worst to come?
Well, the Yemeni government lacks military capabilities to act, because this is a country that is witnessing a lot of internal divisions. And also it's a feudal country, it's a tribal country, where the central government is very weak. Now what they are doing usually, first of all, al-Qaeda is interesting in having a foothold on seaports, because an access to the sea will allow the flow of fighters and also of ammunitions and arms. And also it will allow them to give a hand to the al-Shabaab movement in Somalia, which is an offshoot branch of al-Qaeda, and also to fuel in arms and ammunitions other fundamentalist organizations in the region. Now what the Yemeni government has been doing is relying partially or to a large extent on the US. The US has been providing more than $400 million in military aid per year, plus the drones, the deadly drones. And here let me say one thing. We have two observations. First of all, the drone attacks are counter-reactive. Maybe you remember that drone attack that killed a number of people who were participating in a wedding. And people were very upset, and even the Yemeni parliament adopted a law banning drone attacks, but the executive refused to publish it and to abide by it. So, and this is where the al-Qaeda is playing on local population animosity against those collateral victims of American drone attacks. So this is one thing. On the other thing, there are accusations that the Yemeni government is using such drone attacks to get rid of people they want to get rid of, instead of arresting them. So they are using the drone with the U.S. cooperation to just get rid of them and kill them.
Well, Ms. Jarhum, in parallel to the al-Qaeda threat, we also have, as we said, Yemen, the increasing number of U.S. drones on alleged al-Qaeda military points. However, all the al-Qaeda affiliate groups, whether it's ISIS, Jabhat al-Nusra, AQAP, al-Shabaab, the Islamic Emirate of the Caucasus, and the rest of the al-Qaeda alphabet soup, are primarily engaged in regional conflicts to which they devote their overwhelming proportion of their resources. Now, they do not really pose a major threat to the U.S. So what is the point of the U.S. drones, and why are they actually, in more sense, what are they actually targeting?
First of all, as a Yemeni citizen, I have to express that I am against U.S. drones. Mm-hmm. It is a violation of human rights. The criminals do not have a justice way to prosecute them through a law, a court of law. It also targets civilians. It amplifies the resentment of the people against the U.S. and also amplify the sympathy with al-Qaeda from the local citizens. So I don't think it is a good strategy for the U.S. To follow. I think the reason they are doing that in Yemen or in Pakistan or in other countries is that the governments of these countries are welcoming this kind of intervention in order to, as a security measure to combat terrorism.
But excuse me there, every time a drone goes up in the air and tries to perform a certain offensive, it is costing the U.S. millions of dollars. So there is a certain target for the U.S. there, despite the fact that the al-Qaeda is threatening the region, the security of the region, and not the security of the U.S. or the security of the U.S.'s benefits in the region as well.
To me, I feel the U.S. is kind of piloting projects of drones in these countries, in Yemen or Pakistan or any other countries that the U.S. drones are working. I don't feel that there are really clear targets and they're just piloting some programs on the cost of human life.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Labaki, you have a comment on that?
Well, I think that the Yemeni al-Qaeda is threatening the U.S. If we go back to the recent history, a number of attacks were carried against American military ships in the Aden port, where I think more than 20, in one time, 19 American soldiers died. Also, a number of attacks were prepared against U.S. interests. One, I think, the attempt was to load an aeroplane with a box filled with explosives. And again, let me reiterate the strategic location of Yemen in al-Qaeda quest. It's close to the Holy Land, as I said, and it opens the door to destabilize the whole Middle East, the Gulf. And I think the U.S. is really engaged fully in that war. And there has been a very interesting legal case. Al-Awlaqi, who was the chief of al-Qaeda, was killed by a drone attack. Well, it happened that he had the American passport. And it was, in American legal sense, it was killing of an American citizen without bringing him to trial. And actually the court rejected the case, but here there is a strong case. Because in a democracy, you have to array the person, to bring him to a court of justice.
Has the right to be tried.
To be put on trial. So this tells you how much the American is really engaged in the conflict. Again, Yemen is the back door of Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is very much now frightened of potential developments, political developments in Yemen.
Well, let us talk briefly about the other problem for Yemen. Besides the al-Qaeda problem, there are many parts of Yemen that have become scenes of heavy fighting between Houthi fighters and local tribesmen as well, where the Houthis took the historic town of Thula and Kaukaban. Now, both are lying 45 minutes away from Sanaa. Now, does that indicate that the Houthis are actually planning to act a certain offensive operation on the capital, or is it only to balance power with the Sunni tribesmen?
Well, they have legitimate rights to participate in the political system, to enjoy the freedom of faith, not to be considered as people outside, irreligious, or outside the regular mold. So this is one thing. On the other thing, they were very successful in first of all, going on the offensive, in putting together a number of tribal allegiance that allowed them to get that close to the capital. This is one thing. On the other hand, they are very close to the capital, but they have been very cautious, and I don't see in the near future them trying to destabilize or to go further for many reasons. First of all, they have a lot of supporters in Sanaa. Two, more or less, the Yemeni army has been neutral so far. So they don't want to have the army or part of the army
to face the
after
army.
them. And three, this will raise a lot of geopolitical implications. And the way they have been acting has been very cautious, step by step.
Well,
so they have a number of requests, I think, before moving further to the capital.
We will continue to talk more about this matter, but we have to take our first break for tonight. Please stay tuned. We will be just right back.
Pollution and climate change, medicine manipulation, genetically modified food, the destruction of wildlife, and corporate exploitation. These are all part of a new terrorism threatening our future.
Eco-terrorism, global awakening to a world under threat.
Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
Beyond politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics.
We are back with the Middle East stream with Dr. George Labaki, Professor of Constitutional Law and International Relations at the NDU, and also Ms. Rasha Jarhum, social researcher. Now, as Yemen faces an aggravated terror threat since al-Qaeda has increased the frequency and reach of its attacks against both the military and the Houthis, President Abdel Mansour Hadi has been driving the counteroffensive, determined to oppose this new wave of terrorism by blaming none other than the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran replied by rejecting Hadi's accusations and urging Sanaa to track down the killers of an Iranian diplomat in the country. However, the situation in Yemen now demands all Yemeni officials, including President Hadi, to focus on combating terrorism and calling for tougher penalties for those who carry out terrorism acts against the citizens, the security forces, and public interests. More details on the following report.
Hadi assumed the presidency in Yemen. He seemed as if he had received the ball of fire. There was a sharp division in society, and there had been an awakening of regional demands, sectarian sensitivities, and a split in the army. Al-Qaeda made the situation in Yemen even worse, setting off from its strongholds and leveling painful blows. Hadi's decision to divide the country into 6 federal regions did not convince advocates of independence in the south, nor did it convince those calling for a Houthi state in the north. This has prompted the Yemeni president, in an interview published Monday, to blame regional players for the turmoil in the country, namely Iran, saying that Tehran's fingerprints are clear in both places. Iran, however, denied the accusations made by the Yemeni president, urging Sanaa to instead take serious action to secure the release of an Iranian diplomat kidnapped last year. However, these accusations were not surprising for Iran, since the Gulf Arab monarchies and their Sunni clerical allies have always accused Iran of promoting regional Shiite Muslim power by backing core religionist communities around the region, especially the Houthis of northern Yemen. In the meantime, the United States has escalated its drone strikes on suspected al-Qaeda targets in Yemen since February 2012. Last month, the White House also pledged to continue to support what they referred to as the counter-terrorism efforts of President Hadi's government, aiming to uproot al-Qaeda group in Yemen. Yet critics say that drone strikes violate international laws and cause heavy civilian casualties. In December 2013, a U.S. drone strike hit a wedding party in Yemen's southeastern province of al-Qaeda, killing 11 civilians and wounding 21 others.
Dr. Labaki, lately there has been a series of clashes, as we said before the break, between the Houthis, which are Shia fighters who reside in northern Yemen, and various other parties. Now, President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi claims that he does not want to get involved in a mess that is widely seen as an intertribal affair. This is how he's putting it. Now, however, uncomfortably for him, the Houthis are now very close to the capital, as we said. Now, will that be a card to be played by the Houthis to pressure President Hadi into giving up on governing the areas north of Sanaa for the Houthis alone?
Well, the current president, Abd Hadi Mansour, has changed his policy concerning the Houthi. At the beginning, he was neutral. Then, in one of his latest statements, he compared al-Houthi to al-Qaeda, claiming that they are as dangerous as al-Qaeda. So there are reasons for that. He changed his mind. He reversed his opinion for economic and geopolitical and strategic reasons. The Houthi were able to control 4 districts or governorates in Yemen highland in the north. And in one of them, it's proven now, a foreign company had just published, I think, 1 month ago, the result that there are a lot of gas and potential oil. So this can change the whole thing. If there is a chance to develop Yemen, these resources are necessary. 2, Saudi Arabia has been pushing and putting a lot of pressure to ban Yemen from extracting that gas and oil because they want to keep Yemen under its umbrella. Having access to oil would give Yemen autonomy, financial autonomy, and free Yemen from that.
It will become a second Qatar for Saudi Arabia.
Yes. 2. So this is the 2 major reasons why he reversed his position.
Well, Ms. Jarhum, the reaction on the street to the recent clashes is actually very polarized now. Supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood al-Islah movement, they see the array of groups clashing with the Houthis in different areas as evidence that it is the Houthis who are itching for a fight and trying to eliminate rivals. Now, however, the declining popularity of al-Islah in Yemen due to the demonization of the Muslim Brotherhood across the entire region has also made it easier for the Houthis to frame their fight against al-Islah affiliates as a fight against terrorism, and they might be actually succeeding in that. Where does that put the Yemeni government from all of this, and what is President Hadi planning on solving this dilemma?
Since 2011, when President Hadi came into power, his way of resolving most of the disputes was non-violent approaches and inviting disputed parties into dialogue and to sit and discuss. He did not resort, for example, for the Houthis, at Saleh's reign, there was at least 6 wars with the Houthis, military action, but for Hadi, he is following another approach. Maybe it is because that the military now or the security still needs restructuring, and there is fears that there is divisions within the military. For al-Islah, I do not think there is a risk for Islah to have the same faith like the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Islah has proven that they are political pluralism through joining the joint meetings parties, which is a coalition of few parties in Yemen who formed the opposition. Who forms the opposition, such as the Socialist Party, the Nasirat Party. So this has been, Islah has proved that it is political pluralism since 2009, and now they are continuing, and I don't think that their credit or they will have the same faith like Egypt.
But Ms. Jarhum, Yemeni President Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi last week accused Iran of fueling the two largest rocking conflicts in his country now. The northern Houthi insurgency and the southern separatist movements, they were asking Tehran to lift its hand off Yemen, of Sanaa and the other parts of Yemen. How true are these allegations? And if they were true, what is the benefit for Iran from such a turmoil?
I don't think that President Hadi will make a hasty decision and announce these allegations without having some evidence. I think this was based on intercepting the ship last year, which carried a lot of weapons that was believed that it is coming from Iran origins. This is not the first time that Iran is accused of such allegations. I think since the wars of al-Houthis in 2004 up to 2010, they were always the government of Yemen always accused Iran. But I think that instead of having a confrontation with Iran, I think Yemen should try to invite Iran to prove their good intentions toward the country and invite them to, for example, contribute to the security threats that's going on in Yemen and help stabilize Yemen and playing roles like other countries.
Well, Dr. Labaki, it seems that President Hadi is only repeating the same allegations against Iran that the Saudis have been doing, who go as far as claiming that Iran's meddling in Yemen's affairs is only a small component of a wider Iranian campaign of destabilizing the greater Middle East, from Syria to Bahrain and beyond. Now, come to think of it, it's none other than the Gulf monarchies who are actually financing and arming insurgents in above all mentioned countries as Yemen and more recently Syria for the past 3 years. And now it seems that Yemen is now a new battle for a proxy Saudi-Iranian war over who holds the region's power.
Yeah, definitely Yemen has been witnessing something referred to as the Arab Spring. So Yemen is one of the battlefields, of the regional battlefields, that spread from Tunisia to Egypt to Syria and to Yemen, and maybe furthermore in the foreseeable future. So many the same countries involved in the countries I have mentioned are involved in Yemen. Now, what is the form of their interference? Of course, they finance a number of groups, they can arm, but I don't have specific evidence of these allegations. Your host mentioned the ship, but I don't think it was very conclusive. But again, the important thing is that Yemen also is part of that Middle East and is in the midst of that so-called Arab Spring, where all regional countries as well international community, add to that the issue of terrorism, are involved. The Americans also are helping the Yemeni government by providing around $400 million military aid per year.
Where is these
people
dollars
are
going
coming
then?
there.
If the Yemeni government is still incapable of covering the entire region, its entire country with security, how come? Where does the $400 million go?
I think one word, we have to say one word about that country that had a very great history. The issue is finally about development, about fighting corruption. This country has a very hard and big economic crisis. So I think the solution starts from there, good governance.
If what you're saying, what we said before we start about this matter, Dr. Labaki, you said that there might be certain evidence of oil or gas in the northern region where the Houthis claim the land. But isn't that good news for Yemen as a whole country? I mean, if they sit down together, start a dialogue, a national dialogue, and maybe include the Houthis in a parliament, in a government, in some sort of official